Florencia Martin, production designer for Licorice Pizza, which transports us back to 1973 San Fernando Valley. How familiar were you with that area and time period before you joined the film?
I grew up in the Los Angeles area, so I was really familiar with the Valley. And I've worked on period films that are mainly in the 1950s and 60s. So that was important since our film was set in the early 70s to always be able to like backdate and bring in elements from previous eras. So it was great. I mean, as usual, we always dive into like a lot of research of the era, both architecturally and also character-wise, which inspire the hunt for the locations and where we're going to end up scouting for shooting each space. So.
What kind of conversations did you and Paul Thomas Anderson have? Because this is also sort of inspired by his childhood and early memories of the Valley in the 70s.
Yeah, this was definitely inspired by a lot of Paul's early memories. Definitely like day one of meeting, we went down the tour of all the places that he visited as a kid or remembered. And a lot of the look of the film was built off anecdotes from Paul and other people of the period that had really amazing stories of Tail of the Cock and other restaurants like Ram's Horn and Chadney's, and about waterbeds and pinballs and what it felt like to live in a house with, you know, your older siblings under one roof. And so all of those stories, and Paul definitely has an amazing grasp on the Valley. It's his backyard. And so we went on a lot of scouting adventures down in amazing neighborhoods that like only a local would know and be able to share. And that's how we found all of the locations for our film.
Mm-hmm. Like there is a very like naturalistic and warm vibe to the film. And I don't think like, you know, I feel like a lot of times when things are set in the 70s, it could come off as like kitschy or like corny or like play for laughs, but you don't really get that in this film. And I feel like those like personal stories really lend itself to that.
Definitely. Being able to ground it in reality of people's memories and through also a lot of newspaper articles and local photographers that really showed you know, the demographic of people, the simplicity of the era, and not wanting to make anything but this film be about these characters moving forward in the space and in the setting. And also for me, it was important that they're, you know, still young adults figuring out their life, and that the world looked lived in and real, but not overly cluttered and complicated. And I think that we were able to layer and also pull back to what was like essential for each character and space. That was.
So what was the scouting process like? Because you do have some pretty important locations in the films, like Tail of the Cock, which I understand was on a golf course. Right.
Yes. Yeah, so we were going to shoot at a working restaurant, but then Paul had shot at Billingsley's in his film Magnolia, and we went to take a look, and it was completely defunct, almost like a tear down. So this is a big, ambitious project to take on in our budget, because we have a lot of sets in this film that also had large scope, but it is such an important location because it's a space that everyone keeps coming back to. And it's also where Gary and Alana first meet, and it's romantic and intimate. So it was important. And the big motorcycle jump, we were able to, they allowed us to take over the sand pit at the golf course and turn it into the jump stunt, which was super exciting. And so it was cool to find a location that also influenced the story and added this additional element that we hadn't planned. And scouting, you know, we just focused on the different architectural styles of the houses. So Gary and Alana's house are very similar, a middle class demographic. And in the San Fernando Valley, that was tract houses, which are big developments of modern homes in the 1950s. And then John Peters, we wanted to have him in a Gothic style home because that Tudor style revival was very popular then. And you see that throughout the valley. And so just kind of, and then with the storefronts, a lot of this valley stone with aluminum and large sheets of glass. So really focusing in on architectural styles that were very prevalent in the valley and trying to find areas that haven't been super developed, because right now that whole area, like the rest, I feel, of the United States, is going through a huge development boom. Especially during COVID, everyone decided they wanted to remodel their homes.
Oh yeah, for sure. And you guys shot during COVID, so you had to demodernize everything, right?
Exactly. So we just we show everything practically and not on green screen. And so it was really important when we were scouting to always have in perspective that we can't have a large modern building or a house that's not of the era next door. So it takes a lot of time, but it's also very rewarding because then you have like a really good skeleton to work off of for your next step of, the design overlay for the character.
So for the motorcycle jump scene, like what was originally in the script then? Was it a golf course, or did you guys just decide to adapt it to the golf course once you got that location for the restaurant?
Yeah, we adapted it to the golf course, which is awesome.
I love the entire interior of the Cock as well, because it's so like moody and like you said, like it's like romantic as well. So how big was that entire space, and did you dress all of it?
Yeah, it's huge. It has a walk-up bar that was on an upper level that looked down into the restaurant. That was about 20 booth restaurant and 20 tabletops. We custom built a piano bar with a piano and chairs that sat around. And the largest design build that we did there was, Billingsley's has huge windows that look out into the golf course, which didn't serve our purpose of creating this dark and intimate interior that Paul described to me as a place that he'd go to as a kid and not know what time of day it was inside. Everyone ends up falling asleep in the booth by the end of the meal. And so I just knew like immediately that we would have to create something. And through looking at research, a lot of restaurants in that time period produced beautiful postcards of what the interiors looked like. And everyone had stained glass features, American colonial style lighting. And so all of those elements they brought in and created a construction of reducing the size of the windows, and created 24 custom stained glass windows for the space. And then it was a full 360 experience.
Wow. And then you had to break it down at the end.
Oh my God, so painful. We were like, wait, we just want to go have a martini at the table.
I know, it's like, can you just like make this into a real restaurant? Like
it was one of the locations where we actually spent some time in. I think we shot there for 4 or 5 days. So it definitely was a huge benefit to just be able to like shoot the camera anywhere. But we were fortunate that we were able to do that pretty much at every location, do a full 360, which we like to do. I like to personally do always, because I just feel like it's really beneficial to the actors and the director, that it's not limiting on the day, that they can move around and touch and interact with the sets, the real spaces. And so we definitely did that on this one.
Where did you find the location for Gary's store, his waterbed store turned pinball palace?
So that was fun. I found that actually driving during COVID, because you remember, like in that time period, you didn't know if we were going to be down for 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks. It was such a nebula. And we were about to start pre-production and bring our whole team in. So it was like the worst time to put your pencil down, because we were just like ready to make the movie. It's like, no. So that was still a location we had to find. And I kept going through all these different business areas until I landed in Chatsworth, which is like the upper regions of the San Fernando Valley. And there's this preserved four-way intersection of stores and buildings there that we were able to take over for a month-long period of time and completely redress into Gary's store and street, which is really cool.
Wow. So where did you get all the water beds?
So we got all the water beds. I found the original waterbed manufacturer that actually purchased the waterbed store from Mr. Jack, and he had all of his Polaroids of his storefront and his waterbed models. So we picked our favorites. I had them drawn by our set designer and built at our Paramount staff shop, which is a vendor who builds waterbeds. So they're all custom made for our film from waterbed models then. And it's cool because, like, I think when we think of waterbeds, you think of that bunk bed style, like oak furniture. Mm-hmm. But because we were right in the part where the world was discovering waterbeds, they were a novelty. They were much more piecemealed, which also went with our story that it's a bunch of teenagers making a waterbed store. So it's like,
and then they have to close up shop.
Actually. So it's like they stole a headboard from their mom's house and a lamp, and everyone cobbled together this store, which is how it really was. Mm-hmm. It was really important for our story, I think.
Yeah. And what about those vintage pinball machines? Were all those real? Did you guys build them from scratch as well?
Those are all real. Gene at the Vintage Arcade Superstore, I went, I think the second day I started working on this, I found his contact online, and he is an avid collector and played pinball in the 70s in the Valley, and just been such a huge asset to us. And I'm very thankful that he was able to pull together 60 working pinball machines from that time.
Oh my God.
It's pretty cool.
There weren't 60 in the store, right? You didn't use all of them.
I think there was almost 60.
Oh my gosh. Okay. And then you had to give them all back.
Exactly. But it was pretty fun. I don't know if you got to see the storefront that we recreated next to the Westwood Theater. Oh,
I've seen pictures of it. Yeah.
So that was fun. That was very fun to be part of that. Bring them all back.
Yeah. Well, so I think one of everyone's favorite sequences in the film is the John Peter sequence in the truck, through the canyons. Yeah. And you said no green screen. So what was it like scouting the proper location for that whole sequence?
So we looked, Paul knows the Tarzana Hills very well. And so he already immediately had gut feeling that we were going to find good areas there. And so we would drive at night and just find the most threatening and scary and difficult roads that the truck could possibly go on. And then our fantastic stunts and transportation teams made that happen. I mean, we spent a lot of time. The truck is also one of the first things that we picked. It was one of our major players on the film. And we looked at different roads for different moments. When we first meet John Peters, you'll see this valley skyline, and then this amazing hairpin road that's really tight that Paul shot at from the center of the island when we pass the Ferrari and we come back to meet the Ferrari again. And then just some really amazing, and I think quintessential hills roads, as anyone who lives in LA knows those.
Yeah, it's so esoteric. I'm not from LA, but I've been through the canyons and the valley. It's like, I know exactly what it's like being on those roads.
Exactly. So we just wanted it to feel like as terrifying as possible. That was our goal.
It's awesome. And lastly, what's your favorite detail in the film that you don't think maybe people notice right away or haven't picked up on yet?
Something. My favorite detail in the film is all of the signage is recreated in the same style from the 1970s, which was hand painted on glass. And so for the Pinball Palace, the Waterbed Store, Joel Walks, Mr. Jack's Wig Shop, we were actually able to work with sign painters who came in and hand painted all those storefront windows. So that allows for that transparency when we're shooting through the glass, and it's like the real way it was done. And I always like to find artists from the era or artists that evoke the time period. And I worked with artist Ben Cleve, who works with lettering, and we created this concept of what the signage looked like inside of Fat Bernie's, which is, Arabian Nights and beanbags for sale. And what Ben brings is this incredible eye of mixing typography and color and composition to make it feel fresh and also like something that the kids would have done. And he ended up doing the main title art on the film. And so it was like a really amazing and cool collaboration that I think really has a flair, an undertone in the film that you don't necessarily.
Sure. Yeah, so everyone needs to go rewatch the movie and pay attention to the signage now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Florencia, it was great speaking with you. Thanks so much for your time and congratulations on the film.
I really appreciate your time too. Thank you. This was so much fun.